come and lay your hands on her so that she will get well and live." And he went off with him, and a large crowd was following him and pressing in on him. Now let's go back to verse 21 right quick. "So when Jesus had crossed over again in a boat to the other side." Now he had been on the southwest side of the Sea of Galilee in the area of Gadara. And now he's going to the northeast side of the Sea of Galilee, and he's going to Capernaum. And when he gets there, he stays by the seashore. I got a tongue twister on that. Seashore. And when he arrived there, what was there? All the people. You know, I've often wondered, how did they get the word? How did they know he was coming? How do you think? I mean, he'd been on the southwest side of the Sea of Galilee, and now he took a boat with his disciples, and he goes all the way to the northeast side, and here are all these people waiting on him. Do you think they had other boats that followed, and they kept hooking it on to the coast there to say, "Here he comes, here he comes"? Or you think somebody, I mean, yeah, there's just a lot of, I'm just amazed. I guess maybe you aren't as amazed as I am. I got this wild imagination. Sometimes I think, how did he get the word? And wherever he went, they were waiting, weren't they? Another reason, he's the Son of God. He can heal. He can make the blind see, the lame walk. He can do anything. He can raise the dead. It doesn't take much of that for people to know who he is and for word to get around. And so wherever he goes, there's somebody traveling. And there's probably boats went with him, and there's boats coming back. And so anyway, it doesn't matter. The crowd is waiting there for him. Multitudes of people are waiting when he arrived. They want to see him. They want to hear him. And they need his help. He's their only hope. And that's why they're there. As soon as he gets there, there are two events that take place that is a tremendous demonstration of faith in God. Verse 22. One of the synagogue officials came up by the name of Jairus. He came up to Jesus. He knows who Jesus is, doesn't he? He knows what Jesus can do. And he's one of the officials of the synagogue. He's one of the rulers of the synagogue. And he had a problem so big that he knew that his only hope was who? Jesus, yeah. God was the only one that could take care. And Jesus, he knew who he was. And so he knew that Jesus was his only hope. And so in verse 23, he implored him earnestly. What does that mean? To implore somebody earnestly? Beg them. That's what we'd say, wouldn't it? Today, he stressed it so hard. He begged and he pleaded. He wanted him to come. He has no other hope but Jesus Christ. And so he's implored him earnestly. My little daughter is what? At the point of death. And he asked if Jesus would come and heal her so that she would live. We'll soon get word as we read on. There's a change in her condition. And we'll see that here in just a few moments. Verse 24. Jesus didn't hesitate. And he went off with him. Jesus agreed to go with him to take care of his daughter, to heal her. Not only that, but what else happened with the people? They followed. They followed. The people followed. Now put yourself in it's easy to put yourself in this place. It's easy to see why all these people are going. You can see him walking to Jairus' house. And you can also see all the people in front of him, all the people on both sides, and all the people behind him. They're going there, David, with him. Because, why? Why? Say again, Betty Joe. They want to see a miracle. Okay, they want to see a miracle. That's one reason. What's another reason? How about most of those people need him too? They are sick. They are afflicted. They have something wrong with them that he can heal. That's number two. What's number three? They were just curious too. There's three of them right there, and there may be plenty more. But these people, they need him too. They are sick. They have disease. They have some kind of affliction. Or they want to see a miracle. They're curious. So all of these things, they're going with him. And you can see all these people with Jesus going to Jairus' house. It had to be a noisy place, hadn't it? It had to be a lot of noise going on as he's working his way that way. So let's look at verse 25. A woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years and had endured much at the hands of many physicians and had spent all that she had and was not was not helped at all, but rather had grown worse. After hearing about Jesus, she came up in the crowd from behind him and touched his cloak, for she thought, if I just touch his garments, I will get well. Immediately the flow of her blood was dried up, and she knew in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Immediately Jesus, perceiving in himself that the power proceeding from him had gone forth, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" All his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see the woman who had done this. But the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." Boy, I tell you what, this woman had suffered. She had suffered with this affliction, this hemorrhage. How long? How long? 12 years. We get upset when we suffer with something for a couple of weeks, don't we? She had suffered with this for 12 years. Had she been to a doctor? Lots of doctors. She'd been to lots of them. And it just, her condition kept getting worse and worse and worse. She spent all the money she had. That's easy to see, isn't it? She spent all the money she had on doctors, and her condition is continually deteriorating. So what next? What next? Yeah. She only hoped. She knew who Jesus was. She heard about Jesus. She knew what he could do. She knew what his power was. I like to look for a second about that. On the doctor part, she spent all she had. None of the doctors could help her. And sometime back then, in those times, the treatment was worse than the illness that you had. If you could say that, the cure would kill you. Which makes me think and be thankful that we live in today's world. We have all these medical advances. Boy, they can take care of you, can't they, Hank? the doctors and nurses. But the point is, Jesus was the great physician. Not only could he heal you physically, but how else could he heal you? Your soul. Yeah, your soul. So she knew who Jesus was. She came up behind him. She's in that crowd that we were talking about. They're pressing him on both sides. They're pressing him in front and they're pressing him in back. Wherever he went, all these people went because they need him. And she comes up from the back, which is a pretty good idea. And so can't you see her fighting through the crowd, fighting through there, trying to get to him? Because she knows, if I can only do what? Touch his clothes. If I can just do that, if I can just touch his garments, what will happen, does she think? I'll be made whole. So she's fighting through the crowd. She's pushing her way through. She comes up behind him. She knows he's her only chance she has to be healed. And we can picture this in our minds in verse 28. If I can just get close enough to touch his clothes, his garments, I have the faith. I know I will get well. In verse 29, when she did, what happened? She got well. She got well. Immediately, the flow of blood dried up, we're told. Just as soon as she touched him, she could tell in her body that she was healed by her faith. She touched his clothes, knowing that he would heal her. Verse 30, immediately perceiving in himself. He knew immediately. He felt some of his power leave. He said, who touched my garments? Did Jesus need to ask who touched my garments? No. He knew who it was. He knew who she was. He knew all her problems that she had. He knew what she was afflicted with, but he asked that. Why? I'm sorry? He wants a response, doesn't he? He wants a response from her. He wants the crowd to see, to confirm the word that he is the Son of God. And so he says, who touched my garment? I'm sure he didn't say it the way I just did, but he wants to know that. He felt the impact of her touch. He wanted to bring from her a public confession of faith. She had the faith to believe in him, and her faith motivated her to action, and she acted on her what? On her faith. She acted on her faith. There are many today, many in this world, many in Corsicana that have the faith to believe in him, but not the faith to motivate them into action. Hank, did you have something?
Yeah, isn't it wonderful that today we can have experience the presence and the power of the Lord Jesus in our lives.
Yeah.
That this can be a reality to us, not just something that we read about that happened 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But that in today's life, that we can be close to Jesus, that we
Yeah.
have Christ living in us,
Yeah.
and that we can experience His wonderful love and power
And
that
peace.
God puts in our life through His grace
Yeah.
because of our faith.
Uh-huh. That's right. If we'll have the faith to motivate us to believe and obey and follow him in our life. And there are so many people in this world that do not do that. And you know something? This woman would put a lot of people to shame in today's world, wouldn't she? She put a lot of people to shame.
I think a big point of this also tells us to open our eyes. This woman, by rabbinical law, was unclean by having that issue of blood. She was
Yes.
deemed unclean, so she was by rabbi law couldn't be around
Anybody.
Jewish people.
Yeah.
Yet she went toward Jesus, risked that, no telling what was going to happen to her because of her faith to that closed idea there in society that she was unclean, so get away.
Yeah.
Yet her faith made her go to Jesus. That's a good lesson for us, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Don't think that we're just to look amongst who we think are the pure.
Yeah.
But look out to the world.
Yeah.
Jesus never even batted an eye when someone from outside that needed help came that could demonstrate faith.
Yes, sir.
We need to be aware of those outside who we think
Aren't worthy. Yeah.
And Jairus too. He was a ruler in the synagogue.
Yeah.
What was he going to risk by going to Jesus by those other?
Oh, yeah, the Jewish leaders are, they won't believe anything. They rejected everything.
Example
And
of
he's
faith. So why are we reading these lessons here?
as an example.
It makes me open my eyes to look outside.
Yeah.
And see there are all kind of possibilities of people that have faith, like you said.
Uh-huh.
That maybe didn't want to act on it, but maybe they do want to act on it, and we turn a deaf ear, so to speak.
That's true. We do that sometime, don't we? That's true. I just thought of something. I got to turn this thing off. I almost forgot. That would be embarrassing. So everything that everyone has said is correct. And so he is asking that question to bring from her a public confession of faith. She had the faith to believe in him. She had the faith that motivated her to action, and she'd put a lot of people to shame today. And so verse 31, the disciples asked Jesus in verse 31, with all these people around, with everyone around, and you ask who touched you? And then he looked around to see her. Verse 32. He looked around to see her. Verse 33. The woman was afraid. In verse 33, to the point that she was trembling. She had had this health issue for 12 years, and as soon as she touched him, she was healed. And so she fell down at her feet right in front of Jesus and told him the whole truth, told him the things of her heart, told him all truth. What do you think she said? How would you start off if that was you? How would you start off? Yeah, you'd start off with, this was my condition. I had this condition for 12 years, and I heard about you, and I knew that you could heal me. And so she's just telling it all. I believe in you. I know I have the faith to believe that you can heal me. So I tried to just touch you because I couldn't come any other direction, and I'm healed. So Jesus looked at her in verse 34. He told her, your faith has made you whole. Go in peace and be healed. Healed from the plague that she had suffered for 12 years. Isn't that amazing? I was going to mention something, but I think I'll wait till we get on a little further. Verse 35. While he was still speaking, they came from the house of the synagogue official saying, your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher anymore? But Jesus, overhearing what was being spoken, said to the synagogue official, do not be afraid any longer, only believe. As he allowed no one to accompany him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James, they came to the house of the synagogue official. He saw a commotion and people loudly weeping and wailing, and entering in, he said to them, why make a commotion and weep? Your child has not died, but is asleep. And they began laughing at him by putting them all out, and he took along the child's father and mother and his own companions and entered the room where the child was. Taking the child by the hand, he said to her, watch this now. I can tell you what it means. We know what it means. Talitha Cumai, it doesn't really matter because I got the translation. Little girl, I say to you, get up. That's what he said. Immediately the girl got up and began to walk, for she was 12 years old, and immediately they were completely astounded. And he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this. And he said that something should be given her to eat. So in verse 35, while he was still speaking, someone came from Jairus' home. What'd they say? Don't trouble yourself no more. Tell the Lord not to trouble himself anymore. Your daughter's dead. Can you imagine how he felt? It's easy to understand that, isn't it? He was crushed. His heart was broken. You can see that in your mind. And the person told Jairus, don't trouble the Lord anymore. Don't trouble the Master anymore. It's too late. She is dead. But what did they not know? What did they not know? Thank you. They didn't know the power of Jesus Christ. They had no clue. They thought that was the end of the entire matter. Verse 36, but Jesus, overhearing what was spoken, just as soon as he heard that, he heard those words, he told Jairus to what? Don't be afraid. And what? Believe. Don't be afraid. Believe. Jairus had already acted on his faith. This is a kind of faith that's needed to do what Jesus commands. There were only, I haven't got there yet. I don't want to mention that yet. Verse 37. And he allowed no one to enter the house except Peter, James, and John, and of course the girl's parents. This is only one of 3 times that these 3 men had been allowed to be with Jesus and nobody else. This instance right here, what's another one? In the garden, is that what you said? In the garden, I guess. Oh, I know. You said the Mount Transfiguration. I can read that. The Mount of Transfiguration in the garden, and this instance right here. The only time those 3, Peter, James, and John, have been allowed to be with Jesus alone. And so they came to the house and they went in, verse 38. Then when they got there, they saw all the grief and all the crying and all the wailing, and the room is packed with broken hearts, grieving family, grieving friends. There may even have been professional mourners there. Who knows? Verse 39. Entering in, Jesus said, why are you making such a commotion? Isn't that something? Why are you making such a commotion? Why are you crying? The girl is not dead, but what? Sleeping. Other places, Jesus called death asleep. And one of these days there's going to be the great getting up morning for his faithful and for his unfaithful. Verse 40. They began laughing at him. They thought he was crazy. Why did they think he was crazy? Why are they laughing at him? Why? I'm sorry? They've seen people die before. They know she is dead. They're not an idiot. They've been around death. They've been there. I don't know how long it's been since she died. It's been a while. They had to walk there. They knew she was dead. And here he is coming in saying, she's not dead, she's sleeping. They found no pulse. They knew she went into rigor mortis. They knew she's dead. And they're laughing at him. They're laughing him to scorn. What's the message there for us? They'll always be enemies of what? Of Jesus Christ, His Word, and Christians who follow Him. They'll always be. They'll always laugh at a child of God. They'll always ridicule. But listen, the day is coming when they're going to stand in the judgment and the laughing is going to be over. So He took the young child by the hand, verse 41. And immediately He said to her, what? Get up. Get up. So in verse 42, the girl immediately rose up, or got up. She walked. He brought her back to life. Can you imagine the reaction? Can't you? Can you imagine the reaction of those people that were there? Their hearts were broken and they're crying and grieving, and the family. Can you imagine the reaction of what this happened? I'll tell you, we'll talk about this. It's something else in a second. Verse 43. And He gave strict orders. What was His orders? Don't tell anyone about this. Don't tell anyone. No one should know about this. And then He told the parents to give her food. The words and the deeds and the actions of Jesus drew attention. Why do you think He didn't want anyone to know? Because His fame is spreading like wildfire. It is not His appointed time. He knew that if His enemies heard about this, it'd make them even more bitter. There were at least 3 times that Jesus rose someone from the dead. This case right here, we don't know how long she'd been dead. Who can name another one? I'm sorry? Lazarus. He'd been dead 4 days. Jesus stood in front of the tomb and said, Lazarus, come forth. And he comes out in his grave clothes. Loose him. Take them off of him. Can you imagine what your reaction would be? The one we studied last Sunday, the son of the widow of Nain, they were having his funeral. They were carrying his casket going out of the city. He'd been dead at least 24 hours. They're going to bury him out in the cemetery, and there they go. And Jesus comes and meets them, touches the casket. The possession funeral group stop, don't they? And then He raises him from the dead right there. But yet, after all of that, if you would have been there to see all of that, we think to ourselves, boy, there is no way I wouldn't believe in Him. There's absolutely no way He would convince me for just one of these occasions. But to raise somebody from the dead 4 days, it already was decomposing and walks out. And we think to ourselves, oh, I'm amazed. I will follow Him everywhere. He is our Savior. And even back then, there were those, Purcell, that just walked away, weren't they? Totally rejected Him. There's not a dime's worth of difference today with us than these people. There are many that just walk away, refuse to obey, refuse to live a Christian life. Say they're a Christian and the world sees it differently. So how much do we believe and draw our strength from this eyewitness account that he did this? He has the power over nature, over the sea. He has the power on anything in nature. He has the power over life and death. And best news of all for us, he has the power of what? For us to forgive. I'm sorry, Donna? Jeannie? Sin. The best news of all. He has the power to forgive sins. And when we leave this life, we're coming back. And we're going to meet him in the air. And we're going to forever be with who? Yeah. What wonderful promises we have as a Christian. What an impact he ought to have on our life. What an impact he had on most of their lives. But they'll always be bitter enemies of the cross. They'll always be bitter enemies of Jesus Christ. And they will always be bitter enemies of the everlasting gospel. He came to this earth. He limited himself voluntarily. He did that. He took on human form. And who did he do that for? Us, yeah. Unbelievable how blessed we are. Now, any questions or comments before we go on? Matthew chapter 9. Matthew chapter 9. Right after this event. Matthew, I'm going to read Matthew's version of it. Matthew chapter 9, right after the raising of Jairus' daughter, in verse 27, we pick up Matthew's version. As Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he entered the house, the blind men came up to him, and Jesus said to them, "Did you believe that I am able to do this?" And they said to him, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes, saying, "It shall be done to you according to your faith." And their eyes were opened, and Jesus sternly warned them, "See that no one knows about this." But they went out and spread the news about him throughout all the land. Verse 27. 2 blind men followed him. After the raising of Jairus' daughter, these 2 blind men are crying out to Jesus, "Son of David, have mercy on us." They know who Jesus is, don't they? No one had been on the throne of David for, 700 years, 500. It's been a long time. But they know who Jesus is. And they're crying out to him. In verse 28, he entered the house and he asked the blind men what? What did he ask the blind men? I'm sorry? Do you believe? Do you believe that I am able to do this? Why did he do that? Why did he ask them this? He wanted a commitment from them. He wanted to hear from them. "Yes, Lord," they said. "We know you can do this." He wants a commitment out of us today too. And so look, he asked them. He gave them a condition of their confession of faith in him. And they said, "Yes, Lord, we know you can do this." Our faith reaches out to what God offers us. In verse 29, then he touched their eyes. What happened in verse 30? Their eyes were opened. Their eyes were opened in an instant. Here they are blind. Now they see. Can you imagine what that'd be like if that was you? We don't know how long these men had been blind. I don't know if they'd been blind a week or been blind all their life. But listen, if you'd been blind a week, it makes what a miracle. But if they had been blind from birth, they had never seen a tree. They had never seen the color of a tree. They had never seen the spring flowers. They had never seen their family members and their loved ones if they had been blind that long. But mainly, the message is they were blind and what? Now they see. Thank you. Now they see. They were blind, but now they see. Isn't that amazing? Can you just imagine? It's easy to put yourself in these blind men's shoes. Now let's look on. Jesus told them in verse 30, don't say a word. But just as we've seen in past studies, what happened? They went out and they told everybody. It would be hard for us not to, wouldn't it? If you've been blind and Jesus healed you and made you see in an instant, you had perfect 20/20 vision, or if there's anything better, they had that. It'd be hard just to say, oh, okay, I won't say nothing and just leave. Would it? It'd be hard, but he didn't want them to, but they did anyway. They went out and they told everybody, and his fame spread throughout the countryside. Let's look at verse 32. As they were going out, a mute demon-possessed man was brought to him. After the demon was cast out, the mute man spoke, and the crowds were amazed and were saying, nothing like this has ever been done in Israel. But the Pharisees were saying, he cast out demons by the ruler of demons. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Jesus was, I'll stop right. No, let's go on. Jesus was going through all the cities and the villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. Seeing the people, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and dispirited like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into the harvest. Wow. Verse 32. As they were going out, this man come up. Jesus saw this man. He is not only mute, but what is wrong with him? He has a demon, yeah. And they bring him, to Jesus. This man is both physically and spiritually afflicted. He can't speak. He's demon-possessed. In verse 33, just as soon as Jesus cast out the demon, what happened to the man too? He could speak. He spoke. People marveled. They were amazed. They had never seen such a thing in all of Israel. And so in verse 34, but the Pharisees were saying, that these miracles that Jesus did, he does them by the power of the devil. Boy, how hard is your heart when you're going to have this kind of reaction, isn't it? How hard would your heart have to be? I think it makes it clear for us to understand when he talks about having their conscience seared over with a hot iron. Who fits that category? Yeah. Has the bell rang yet? Oh, it did? Well, we'll just go on anyway. No, I'm just kidding you. I'll stop there.